I can imagine a conversation between an FBI agent and a paid informant who has been on the payrolls for 8 months, where the FBI agent says, "You got to bring me something, or we're done paying you because obviously our investment is not providing any returns. So you got to bring me something." That puts pressure on the paid informant, who obviously wants to retain this gig, to go out and just find anybody to bring to them. Is there anything in your reporting that in any way confirms that sort of fantastical notion in my head?
No, actually, in fact, I think that's a really well-grounded view of what's going on, which is that in many ways, my book and this reporting is as much about terrorism as it is about justice and the fairness of justice and the administration of justice in the United States. And by that I mean the FBI sends people, paid informants, into communities, and they are tasked with finding terrorists, right? And they can make a lot of money if they find these terrorists. Informants, for example, can make six-figure paydays working on a sting operation. And so they have a direct financial incentive in finding people who are interested in committing acts of terrorism. And so what they're ultimately finding then are not really truly dangerous terrorists like Tamlan Tsarnaev or Faiz Shahzad, who are putting together bombs in their basement. Instead, they're finding people on the fringes and the margins of Muslim communities who are economically desperate, mentally ill, and these are people who can easily be manipulated into moving forward in terrorism plots and make for the informants a pretty nice payday. And the truth is that that incentive structure really pervades all levels of the Bureau when it comes to counterterrorism. So from the very top, the U.S. Congress sets the FBI's budget. They're the ones that say, you know what, you're going to spend $3 billion, the largest portion of your budget, on counterterrorism. And in turn, the FBI can't spend $3 billion and come back to Congress and say, hey, you know what, we didn't find any terrorists. And so in turn, the FBI executives put pressure on field offices to find terrorism cases. Those field offices put pressure on agents to find terrorism cases. And in turn, those agents put pressure on their paid informants to find terrorism cases. And that builds a whole incentive structure for the FBI to make public prosecutable terrorism cases and creates kind of a wag the dog situation where every new arrest justifies future funding for terrorism by really exaggerating the threat of Islamic terrorism within the United States through these sting operations. If you look at the hard data, for example, in the decade after 9/11, more people were killed by lone gunmen like we saw in Colorado and in Connecticut than by lone wolf terrorists with al-Qaeda sympathies. And yet I believe the perception in the United States is that Muslim terrorism and Islamic terrorism in the United States is this terribly dangerous thing and this terribly pervasive thing. And a reason for that is the rush and the number of terrorism prosecutions that have happened as a result of these sting operations. Because when most people hear about these arrests, they don't hear about how, well, the person never had access to weapons, he never knew a terrorist, it was an FBI informant posing as a terrorist. What they hear is that this person conspired with al-Qaeda to place a bomb at a downtown skyscraper, and they usually never read or hear that second or third day story that gives greater context to what was going on. And what this has done has exaggerated the public perception of terrorism from within Muslim communities, and also, in a roundabout way, continues to justify the future funding of the FBI's counterterrorism program and these very aggressive sting operations that target people of very questionable danger and importance.
I mean, if the FBI, if the country decided tomorrow that we need to root out the mafia, let's say, they could. This could work in the exact same way, right? I mean, you could send out your paid informants to look for anybody who's trying to set up some type of crime syndicate, and anybody sitting around, a deli or sitting, at an old folks' home or whatever it was. Like, we should get together and we should run drugs, or we should get together and we should control the prostitution business. That's basically it, right there, right? I mean, that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, you're right. And what this really gets at is an early decision after 9/11. You may remember that there was talks after 9/11 about creating a separate domestic intelligence agency, like how Britain divides MI5 and MI6, where you have a law enforcement agency that traditionally like the FBI, and then you have a kind of domestic CIA that looks for counterterrorism. Robert Mueller, the FBI director, lobbied hard against that and was able to persuade George W. Bush's administration to keep everything in-house under the FBI umbrella. And what that has done is really create an agency that has two identities. One of those identities is traditionally law enforcement, investigating bank robberies and organized crime, and the other mission is counterterrorism, is intelligence-based. And the problem is that, in measuring its success, in showing how it's doing its job, the FBI still uses a very traditional metric of law enforcement agencies, which, as we discussed, are things like arrests made and prosecutions and successful convictions. Whereas, as an intelligence agency, that's not the type of things you really discuss, because you're not trying to make arrests. You're trying to prevent crimes from happening. You're trying to gather intelligence so that if something were to happen, you would be more apt to know what was going on. And so you're not measuring the CIA, for example, based on the number of people that it detains or the number of plots that it thwarts, because those things are not stuff that it discusses and is also not something that it generally measures its success by. And what we have here then are the adaptation of law enforcement tactics by the FBI, the same types of techniques that were used in the drug war and the war against the mafia in the 80s, being adapted for counterterrorism. And the end result of that is, I believe, the netting of people who really aren't the terrorists of tomorrow, but are these people who are easily drawn into sting operations, while at the same time the handful of dangerous terrorists who are out there aren't coming to the FBI's attention through these sting operations, and really only come to the FBI's attention once they've laid their bomb, and the FBI, it's too late for the FBI to prevent any sort of attack.
This may be out of your portfolio, but I mean, that decision to keep that function within the FBI, I can certainly, off the top of my head, come up with a good argument as to why one should do that, right? You don't want a separate sort of domestic spy agency, because God knows what could happen there. And theoretically, within the FBI, they have dealt with this problem in the past, and they may have in-house sort of checks and balances to make sure something like this doesn't go awry. But as you say, the metrics that they apply there, they have to justify their operations. Do you think that that decision was a good one to have it to hold this function within the FBI, and B, how does this reform? In other words, because this has obviously continued through the Obama administration. In some ways, I think you write that it is just simply grown by its own inertia, I would imagine. But how does that? Do you need a new FBI director who comes in and says, "Look, I will sell this function to Congress without the sort of statistics that we need to pad it, but we need to reorient the way that we're doing this"?
Yeah, I think on the first part of your question, which is, was it proper for the FBI to continue to not split the FBI, or to not create a new intelligence agency that would be a sort of domestic CIA? And obviously, if we did create a domestic CIA, that comes with a whole set of different problems associated with it, including, the propriety for spying in the United States on people who may or may not have been suspected of committing a crime. I think that would have its troubles in any way. So I'm not necessarily advocating for a separate agency, or that I think a separate agency would be any better than what we have now. But the problem for the FBI has been that as they've evolved into an intelligence and counterterrorism organization, they've remained very wedded to the techniques and structure of a traditional law enforcement agency. The only method that the FBI has to get someone off the street that they believe is suspected of terrorism or going to plot an act of terrorism is to use traditional law enforcement techniques and prosecute them as a result through these sting operations. And so you see that is what the FBI is doing. And as far as the Obama administration, what's interesting is that these techniques have increased under the Obama administration, and we're seeing the targeting of people who are really highly questionable through these sting operations. Since Obama was elected, you've had a number of cases involving people who had documented mental illnesses. For example, there was a man in Seattle who was caught in a terrorism sting who had schizoaffective disorder, which means he had trouble distinguishing between reality and fantasy. And it was the FBI informant who led the way for him and provided everything he needed for his act of terrorism. And so I think that's what we're seeing is kind of a doubling down by the Obama administration on these types of tactics. And, if you look at his election in 2008, I'm sorry, his reelection in 2012, he wasn't criticized like most Democrats usually are for national security. In fact, that was one of his strengths. And part of that has been his continuation of many of Bush's policies, including drones and including the use of sting operations. As far as what a new FBI director can change, you're beginning to see a slow shift by the FBI and some acknowledgement that it may have gone overboard with counterterrorism. You see Robert Mueller talking a lot about needing to beef up the FBI's response to cyber terrorism and cybercrime. And I think, the question would be, how can the FBI continue to stay vigilant and alert on counterterrorism while at the same time not relying so heavily on the justification of its budget through these sting operations? And I think as we're getting a new FBI director, perhaps that's something he and the Congress could discuss, though I don't necessarily know that they will. And I certainly think that there no longer is a reason, given the data on terrorism after 9/11, that counterterrorism should be the single largest part of the FBI's budget. It should be a part. We should be surveilling people. We should be looking at people who may be interested in committing an act of terrorism. But I'm not sure that deserves to be the single biggest focus of the FBI, which is also charged with investigating organized crime, financial fraud, many things that, while not as dangerous to people, are certainly dangerous to us as a country.
Trevor Aaronson, author of The Terror Factory, Inside the FBI Manufactured War on Terrorism. Thanks so much for your time today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.